Okay. Well, I will convene the meeting. Welcome to the January 3rd Finance Committee meeting. I should advise you, you're being audio and video recorded, and we will start by calling the meeting to order. Laura.
Sure. Councillor Maori.
Here.
Councillor Labarge.
Here.
Councillor Moulton.
Here.
And Councillor Nash.
Here.
Okay. So we have all members present. Let's see. I'm wondering, why don't we do approval of the minutes number 3, and then we'll take any public comments related to number 4. How about that? So the next thing would be the approval of the October 20. Oh, right. The October 26th minutes. So, right, those are the ones you have.
I'm sorry, it's just December 7th.
Right.
October
Just
26th
December
are not
7th.
available.
Right. That's right. Okay. So I'd entertain that motion.
Move to approve December 7th meeting minutes.
Second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
Councillor Moulton.
Yes.
And Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So, yeah, let's see if for anyone in the public out there, if you have a comment or question, you could make it now. Yeah, just raise your virtual hand or your real hand and I'll look. It's a small group. Okay. Oh, there's hands. Let's see. Adele, would you state your town and feel free to make a comment.
I'm Adele Franks. I live in Florence, although I am coming to you from Florida, where I don't live, fortunately. My question is about this proposed new fund. Over what time period would the funds have to be used?
So I'm going to write down questions, and then when we speak with the mayor and the director, I'll make sure we answer them. Yeah. Eric, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I live in Florence. Eric Broadbent. I live in Florence. And I just want to say that reading the text of the resolution it's a great summary of the steps that have been taken so far. It appears that this is an expenditure that the city can make responsibly, and I'm happy that it's being considered. And so I applaud everyone here and probably many others that have brought us to this point. I have been looking at the nuances of how we may approach the residential energy side, and it's pretty clear it's going to take some effort for us to decarbonize and to move our residential building stock in that direction. There are companies formed that actually charge money to do this service. So one way or another, if we want to make progress, we're gonna need to look at expenditures to move forward. So I really appreciate the fact that this is on the table, and hoping for the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, I see Sharon. Good evening, Sharon. Could you state your town? Even though I know.
Unmute. I live in the Leeds part of Northampton in your Ward 7B. And I just want to say that, since I retired in 2013, my highest priority has been doing on whatever I could to get the city and the state to recognize the climate emergency, and the city has been, pretty good at saying they recognize it, but how you spend your money is the most important way to show that how you really feel. So all I want to say is that people need to remember that no matter how many resolutions you pass, if your if the end result isn't funding what needs to be done, then you're not doing what you need to do. So thank you very much for having this, for considering what you're considering.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. I'm not seeing any more. Oh, is that a hand? No, not a hand. Okay. So to some extent, we could probably take any, further questions, but we, two of us are a little under the weather, so I am going to keep it a little short and sweet tonight. But so number 4, so yeah, so we're going to be discussing the 22.219 in order to appropriate $3 million in free cash to establish the Climate Change Mitigation Stabilization Fund. And let me just say that I was thrilled to see this on the agenda, and my reasons for recommending it be referred and make a stop over here at Finance Committee wasn't that anyone needs more meetings, but I feel like I want with a new fund, I would like the Finance Committee to be well grounded in the foundation, of understanding. Since this will hopefully be something that continues and grows, I really want us to understand the nuances of it, and also maybe to allow for a little bit more public input before we vote on Thursday. So that's why I recommended it, and so why don't we start with the mayor, or, oh yes, Councillor Nash.
I have a request, Councillor Maori, that
Yes.
we read the full order because, I actually talked about this with Director Nardi earlier, that we had a whole bunch of financial orders, and some of them were really nicely written. And this is one of them. I could see that there was time and effort put into it. And I think I'd be just to take a moment to read the whole resolution or the whole order. I'm fine with, if you'd like me to do that, or you could do it, but I think, I think it'd be nice to read it into the record.
Right.
I
That sounds
agree with
great.
that.
Would you mind reading it? I have a little frog kind of thing in my throat.
Oh, yeah, let me see. All right, give me a second.
I actually had the same response, that I slowed down and reread it today, and I was like, wow, this is very eloquent.
Okay.
All right.
You want me to go?
Yes, please do.
All right, here we go. Oh, all right, hold it. Laura pulled that up. Okay, now it's smaller. All right, upon the record, oh, that's harder. Okay, here we go. In City Council, December 15th, 2022, upon the recommendation of Mayor Shara, item 22.219, in order to appropriate $3 million free cash to establish Climate Change Mitigation Stabilization Fund. Whereas in 2018, Mayor Narkowitz committed the city of Northampton to becoming a net carbon neutral city by 2050, and City Council endorsed this goal. And whereas in 2021, the Resilience and Regeneration Plan was adopted by the Northampton Planning Board and endorsed by City Council to further signify the city's commitment to addressing and mitigating climate change. And whereas the decisions we make should increase our ability to anticipate, adapt, and thrive in a changing climate, and reduce our carbon footprint and our impact on climate change. And, oh, you moved it. Where'd I go? Oh, okay. And whereas the city needs to plan for the cost to implement changes to address our resilience and regeneration plans. And whereas Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, subsection 5B provides that City Council may create a stabilization fund for any lawful purpose. And whereas the city received $21.7 million in American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funding, and and allocated 10 million to loss revenue in fiscal year 2022, which has been certified to the FY 2023 general fund undesignated fund balance free cash. Now, therefore, be it ordered that pursuant to Chapter 40, subsection 5B of the Massachusetts General Laws, City Council hereby authorizes the creation of a climate change mitigation fund for the purposes of funding expenditures relative to the city's operations and capital needs to mitigate the impacts of climate change and to support the city's net carbon neutral goals, and vote to transfer from fiscal year 23 undesignated general fund free cash the sum of $3 million into the climate change mitigation stabilization fund. I think I only screwed it up a little.
You did fine.
It was lovely. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. That was nice actually, I found some of the answers to questions I had when I reread it too, so that was helpful. Would the mayor like to speak to this before we ask any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, counselors, for the opportunity to speak a little bit more about this stabilization fund that I'm asking the council to please authorize. So the purpose is to continue to plan for costs to implement our climate resilience and regeneration plans, as you heard in the order. And that includes design and strategic planning. So for me, this fund signifies that climate action is a priority, not just for my administration, but for the city, a city priority. To not get too sort of maudlin, but particular mayors or particular councilors are temporary, right? Where we're maybe longer than ephemeral, but we, certain people's priorities may not be the next people's priorities. So this stabilization fund is a way of solidifying that city priority for the city. And so if the fund is approved by the council, it'll also include policy among our financial policies for allocating funds in the future from our undesignated funds or free cash. So Director Nardi worked with the Collins Center to combine all of our financial policies into one comprehensive document, and a policy for adding funds to this hopefully newly created stabilization fund will be added to those policies. To the larger goal of the fund, as already been stated tonight, as you all certainly know from the capital improvement plan, the projects to decarbonize our buildings are speaking just of our city buildings. So our buildings, especially the schools, to get to net zero are extremely expensive. And then Eric was also talking about the entire community. So these are big goals that we have, and they will include a lot of expenditure. We want to make sure that we're planning for these projects and that we are earmarking some funds for these goals. So also, I feel like by creating this fund, we're being very transparent about our priorities and how these funds are being spent. And hopefully, and maybe most importantly, we hope that having some available funds positions us well to be ready to take advantage of state or federal grants that we know are absolutely needed for the US to start making real advancements in terms of decarbonizing. So often grants involve some skin in the game from a municipality or the city to handle a piece of a project. These funds will help give us flexibility to be able to take advantage of opportunities and leverage more funds. And additionally, while we're not quite there yet, I will be bringing to the council some additional changes in the future that I hope the council will support regarding our strategic planning and city project management and our approach to climate goals, to be able to facilitate viewing all of our operations through a climate action lens. And this fund will help with those sort of additional changes that we have coming in the future. So that's kind of an overview, and happy to talk more. Director Nardi is here too, and hopefully can answer some questions.
Thank you for that, Mayor. That that answered some of my questions. I have some more, but let's see if other councilors or Director Nardi, anyone else want to chime in? Yeah, Councilor Labarge.
Thank you. Mayor, thank you very, very much for going over the funding for the 3 million free cash for the climate change mitigation. I really appreciate that thorough process you just went through. And looking at it, your larger goal to decarbonize our buildings is very critical. And we've heard this from so many people on the outside, and especially the group that are looking at eventually having you place a director very, very experienced and knowledgeable of forming a director to handle whatever needs to be put in place in our city. So thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you going over what you did.
Thank you, Counselor.
Yes, Counselor Nash.
Yes, thank you. So this is for the mayor and the finance director. So towards the end, it's mentioning that we have free cash, we have the general fund, we have lost revenue, and can you explain what we're doing right there? Because I think some of the significance gets lost in some of the accounting that we're doing. And that so anyway, I just want to throw that out there, this opportunity to explain all of the moving of the money, so we're doing things in a way where we're being as transparent as possible.
Sure. So we were allowed to take up to $10 million in what's called lost revenue from ARPA. So what that did was it took that amount. So this is of our total 21.7 million. So it's 10 million of that we were allowed to take as what's called lost revenue. And what it did is it kind of pushed it into our free cash, but it's still, these are ARPA funds. They just are kind of been moved through free cash. And the real advantage to having done that was that it allows a lot more flexibility for those funds. It takes them out of that ARPA timeline and the ARPA restrictions. And we were allowed, so we took that amount, which was the maximum amount that we could, to allow flexibility for those funds. So that is why we are able to use these $3 million of ARPA funds to create the stabilization fund. Does that help? But it came through free cash. So it's while it wasn't part of our undesignated fund, right? So this wasn't a result of holdover funds, or what's the term, Charlene? You have a great term for it. Or vacancies or things like that, where unexpended funds. Right. This is ARPA funds, but it's come through free cash. Does that make it easier? Or
yeah, I thank you. The term free cash is just always drives me crazy, because it's like, oh, we got this basket of money somewhere.
I could change one thing. It would be whoever named it free cash.
I'll blame Mayor Narkowitz for that.
This is the DOR. I mean, this is.
I know. So
it's poorly named by whoever named it, however many years ago.
And so a bigger picture, so stability funds in general, could you explain how you and the director explain how we use these? So we're setting aside $3 million into a fund that we're hoping it's just going to stay there, and we're going to draw from it at points when we have needs, but it's not going away. It's not like we're just going to spend down $3 million and then it's gone, correct?
Correct. It's like our other stabilization funds. So that's when I was talking about the policy, that we will add a policy to our existing financial policies. Currently our current policy is to take a third of our certified free cash and allocate it equally between excuse me, the three current stabilization funds: capital, fiscal, and general. This would be adding a fourth stabilization fund to that. So we would create a policy for allocating some of our free. So we won't have this ARPA again next year, but we will have some amount of undesignated fund balance. And so we will create a policy for how we designate funds into this stabilization fund. So we will add to it annually, but we also will draw down from it. So again, one of the key things that I think is important about creating it is that it creates flexibility for us. So, you know, if a grant came available and we needed to show some investment in it, we would be able to draw from this stabilization fund for something like that. Or depending on, another thing that planning for big projects cost a lot of money, right? But even the planning for projects have expenditures along the way. It would give us flexibility for those sorts of expenditures too, or studies, things like that, things that we need to be able to take on these large decarbonization projects.
And so like our other stability funds, it indicates a long-term commitment to getting projects done in the city.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And one more question, that city operations and capital needs. So that these funds are largely for city property, correct? And that I mentioned that because that it was mentioned during public comment that there's also a need for finding out ways to fund the transfer of the way people heat their homes, and that's not what this fund would be for, or could it be? I don't know. I'm asking that.
Eventually.
So there are, and Charlene can speak to this better than there are restrictions on how we could allocate funds to the public, right? Public funds to members of the public. So right now we're talking about our municipal buildings and our municipal operations. But I think like Eric was mentioning, if there are consultants we need to bring in, or if there are programs we can be a part of that are going to help residents to make changes in their own homes, this is a possibility we could use these funds to help with something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Labarge.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Nash, very well. Anyway, so Mayor, the 3 million, how was that 3 million determined?
We have been, figuring out how we're going to allocate these ARPA funds. So, 4 million I designated for community recovery, and we're in that process. And this was an amount that we thought was a reasonable, good, solid start to create a stabilization fund.
Okay, so what I've heard from you this evening, Mayor, number one concern is the design and planning, correct? Because mostly everything we go through, we have to design and have that planning put in place. And that is not cheap, that's costly.
It is.
Correct?
Yes.
And then after that is completed, then we go into looking at the larger goal, which you talked about, correct? To decarbonize our buildings and so forth. You're looking at more money there. There's no question about it.
Yes, these are big, big projects.
Exactly. And then you're saying that we're going to be looking at state and federal grants, which I've seen us do this before in the city. And thank you, Mayor, because I think people are really going to understand where this 3 million is going to be going to. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Yes.
The city works incredibly hard and is very successful, I'd say, at pursuing any funding opportunities that are available. So it is my fervent hope that as a society in general, we're going to step up and do better about providing funding for some of these goals that we all absolutely have to start meeting, right? So the federal government really needs to step up, and the state government needs to step up and help municipality, help where the work actually happens is, of course, in our cities and towns. And so it is my hope that we are going forward, we're going to see more funds allocated for this kind of work.
Council Moulton.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor, for that, the detailed explanation. I just wanted to underscore a couple of things you said and then catch up with, make sure we answering questions that were expressed during public comment and in chat. One of the things that you mentioned is that by removing the ARPA money to the stabilization fund, it removes that money from restrictions about its use, which would, for ARPA, would take it only through 2026. So that this 3 million seeds fund that will be ongoing and will have no expiration date, to answer Adele's question, correct?
Correct. So taking those funds as lost revenue, removes them from the ARPA restrictions and timeline. And since this $3 million is from lost revenue, it doesn't have any of those restrictions attached to it and does not need to be expended by 2026. Correct.
And I also want to say this is very forward thinking, and particularly the use of this money to leverage, as all the councilors have mentioned, leverage state and federal funds is critical. Because the city's not going to do it without taking advantage of those programs which will be made available, and we have to, as you say, have to jump on them. Another question is, who will administer this fund and make decisions about priorities?
Well, so with our other stabilization funds, these expenditures will have to come through the council. But we will, as I sort of gave a little bit of a hint, we'll be bringing sort of some additional changes to the council sometime in the near future. And that I think will help answer that question. But right now I've been working with Planning and Sustainability Director Carolyn Mish and Central Services Director Pat McCarthy, and other staff who are very key in the city working towards our sustainability goals. And they will help sort of determine policies around utilizing these funds. But they will be, I assume a lot of them will be driven by capital improvements that we have planned that meet our goals. And so we will be coming, when there's an expenditure, it'll come to the council and will be explained as to why we think that this is a good use of these funds.
Is there anything you want to say at this point as an example of a project that you expect will be brought forward this year?
Oh, this year, Charlene's been deep into the CIP. Do you have something off the top of your head? Otherwise,
So I will get one, but I did want to say the capital planning process, the mayor was very clear that with all her department heads and the application that went out, there were questions of how their project impacted and how it bettered the environment and its impact. So every department had to answer those questions, and I know Director McCarthy and before Energy Officer Chris Mason left, worked very hard to put together a plan, which included getting all the energy management studies and plans done first, and what projects would come out of those, and the ones that have already been done. I think 3 buildings for the city have been done, 3 studies, study with 3 of the city buildings, and I think 3 of the school buildings have been done. And so all of their projects have been based on each year, like what would be done to move those projects forward. And that included additional studies. So for instance, and I wish I had it with me, and if you give me a second and move on, I can definitely go in and look at some, but they looked at all the schools. I think in particular the lead school, they're learning a lot from that school. There's 2 wings, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. There's a 70s wing and there's a 50s wing, I think.
yeah.
And with those wings, they're learning a lot about how they can make the schools closer to our goals, what they can do in those wings. So there are projects in that way that are coming forward in the capital improvement program this year. I know they've not only addressed some of the schools, but they're also looking at, Director McCarthy's looking at the envelopes of buildings, because one of the first things we want to do is keep water out. We're looking at a lot of insulation in buildings. So we want to tighten up those envelopes. And then we've been looking at HVAC systems, energy management systems for those HVAC systems. We're trying to put off actually updating boilers, you know, we're trying to update them to more efficient and not using oil, we're using gas, or if we're not using gas, we're using, you know, the more, I know in one of the schools they talked about, one of the projects is bringing in, what are they called when you put them on the wall? Like
Mini split.
Yes, mini splits, thank you. Because, and so they're talking about doing that because that is the best way to get that building closer to being carbon neutral, the way it's designed. So they're learning a lot. So those projects, and you'll be hearing a lot more of that when we talk about the capital improvement program in March.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Yeah, my question, you answered most of my questions. I was just curious, so the state allows us to create this fund. Do they put restrictions on your interpretation of it? I mean, do you have latitude to kind of define what we use it for? Is that up to the municipality, or does the state kind of get involved with that?
That is a good question. I don't think so, but Charlene, do you know better?
No, so you can set up a stabilization fund, as it said, for any lawful purpose, and then the mayor, between you and the mayor, you decide what that purpose is, and we're defining that purpose as addressing our climate change. So that's pretty broad because, as the mayor said, we still need to refine some of this process a little more. But I think the first key goal here was to make sure we start allocating or appropriating money or putting it aside, so that when we have that process down, and when the mayor, as she alluded to, some changes that she's planning, so everything is funneled through an energy and sustainable lens, we have funding that we can pull from. And that doesn't mean we won't be using, we also have the capital planning as well, but I think the mayor really truly felt like this was a good way to track it, not only to have it available and to show the state that we're serious, but it's also a way for us to track how we've used our money and to show you know, show the community that this is an ongoing commitment for the city.
Yeah, and I mean, just to be clear, to even begin to meet our goals will take much more than what this fund is going to contain.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to give people a false impression that $3 million and we're done and we're carbon neutral. That's not going to be the case, but I think it's important to set aside this fund to allow us, again, that flexibility to work on these goals.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also, so I mean, it's not restricted to capital projects. Sounds like with that broad definition, we do have the latitude. I had one more question. Something about that. I'll think of it. But oh, I guess it was about, yeah, I guess it was about the predictability of the annual budget. I mean, it's ongoing, but it's going to be relational to, you know, to free cash and what else is going on in the city. We can't, with this type of fund, you can't say this amount is, you know, for sure going to be in it each year, right? So
Absolutely right.
okay.
I mean, there's, you know, there are policies and financial policies and goals for generating a certain amount of free cash, you know, that are sort of best practices. And, you know, I think we try and hit that, but the exact amount of free cash that's generated is not known.
Right.
Based on so many variables during a fiscal year.
It does seem like, you know, a great way to streamline and organize the budget and while stating a value. No matter, you know, we have the ARPA funds this year, but beyond just additional funding, I really appreciate the streamlining of it and then calling out of the climate intentions. And I hadn't, you know, and what you know, were saying about making it easier to receive funding, that's great. So I think it's wonderful. I mean, are other municipalities doing this? I hadn't heard of this.
It's, Bill Newman asked me that this morning, and I haven't had a chance today to see, but Charlene, have you heard of anything like this? I'm not.
I have not. I do not know if other communities are putting aside funds in this manner.
Well, we'll make sure we rub it in their faces. That's all. I think you answered all my questions. And again, I know we'll have other opportunities, but I just really wanted to make sure that this committee had a strong kind of understanding. I do see, let's see, is there any other questions? There is something else here. Funds be used for salaries.
There is, apparently Adele was on there on chat. Want to know, can these funds be used for salaries?
Oh, go ahead, Charlene. Did you want to answer
So,
that?
as finance director, whenever I hear that question, and I understand, the value some people have with maybe they would want that to be done, but as finance director, that really makes me afraid. We never want to use one-time funds for salaries because where does it come next year? Where is that being funded from? It is really stabilization funds. All of our reserves are really best used for unanticipated emergency one-time, and not always emergency, but one-time expenses. You do not want to, it's not an ongoing budget. Like as you mentioned, Councilor Maori, we don't know how this will be funded. We don't know what the economy is going to be like. We don't know what our revenue is going to be. So you don't want to rely on how it will be funded. So no, these are one-time funds used.
Thank you, Charlene, for answering Adele Frank's question.
Any councilors, any other further questions? Again, we'll have Thursday as well. Well, thank you so much. This is incredibly exciting, and I really thank you for your time today, both director and mayor, and also our members of the public who always show up to support, ask the right questions. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you for organizing this, Rachel. It's great.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, finance committee members, you can't go yet, but everyone else can go. Thanks very much.
Bye.
I almost psyched myself into leaving because I was saying goodbye to people.
I know.
We don't have much. I just want to check in. Well, that was really wow. I'm really excited about that. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted, this was Laura suggested this. Of course, she always makes the wisest suggestions. If we just want to just check in about the budget listening session while it's still fresh in our heads. Yes, Councilor Moulton.
Councilor, could we make a recommendation on the order to the
Yes.
council? I would move a positive recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call.
Thank you, Stan.
Yes, thank you so much.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Moulton,
Yes.
and Councilor Nash.
Yes.
All right, so we're positively recommending this to council. Thank you for that. Boy, I knew there was some little clincher we weren't doing there. Okay, so yeah, so recap of the budget listening session. Thank you, Laura, for this for your summary and for the recap that you shared with the mayor. I thought that was very helpful and I really appreciate that.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, well, let's just check in. Okay.
Well,
Yes, Councilor Nash.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. Yes, so I think it was Ms. Lella. Oh, I forget her name now. Anyway, yes, that she had made a comment during the listening session that we had missed an opportunity around community choice aggregation, and Laura shared the email with you guys, but that that actually we haven't missed out on that. We're still in line for that. It's just taking a while to get through the state to allow us to move forward with that. But yes, that we're still hot in pursuit of making that happen. Yeah, because when it was mentioned, I was like, oh yeah, where does that stand? And so anyway, that's good news that we are still pursuing that. So just wanted to say that.
No, thank you for that. I found that
you.
email very helpful because I was wondering the same thing, and now we can converse with our constituents and let them know what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
Is that it?
yeah, and Councilor Milton.
Yeah, this is an excellent summary of the 14 people who spoke on December 7th to the listening session. And for anyone who wants further, more detailed comments that they offered, obviously they can go to our minutes. I would like to have the record show in this executive summary that we also received 7 emails on December 5th, 6th, and 7th from people who specifically said that they were unable to attend the listening session that evening of December 7th. And they also offered some thoughts about budget priorities. So I just feel that as an accurate representation of all of those who took the time to either speak in person to us or to send us emails, that we should include the fact that we received those 7 additional emails. And I think Laura, that you sent us all of those, so you have access to those.
I did, and I can list them as exhibits that were reviewed
Yeah.
as part of the
Yeah.
meeting. So
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh,
Thank you.
Excellent. That's an excellent suggestion. Thank you. Yeah, I just my couple of comments. We'll start talking about this, earlier next year, but before we do it again. But I think it was Council Jarrett who suggested, I don't know, that we think about, more in person or moving it around or somehow, being having more than one session so that we can capture more, diverse comments. So we can think about that. Yeah, I think that was the only, I thought it was, went really well. And I actually was surprised, I just didn't know what people were going to come up with. So I thought that was, and when constituents are bringing their own revenue stream suggestions, that's always great too. So I thank you for, and I wanted to thank Council Moulton for pursuing this and bringing it up early on in your term. And I'm glad you did, because it put a fire under us to make it happen. So thank you, and thank you to Laura. Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Can I ask you, when is our next meeting?
Well, we'll see what's referred. If something is referred this Thursday, it will be next Wednesday. It will be next Wednesday, the sorry, looking at the calendar, the 11th. But if nothing is referred, yeah.
Council, you had mentioned a possible conflict for yourself on Wednesday evenings.
Yeah.
Is that
Mine's
resolved or?
Excuse me, mine is on the 18th, Councilor Miori.
Yeah. Right. We shouldn't have a meeting on the 18th.
Okay.
No meeting.
There's no financial orders on the agenda for Thursday.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
So there'll be no referrals.
Right. So I don't think we have a meeting. I don't think we're going to have to meet on the next week either.
On the 11th?
No. So the next possible meeting would then be not until
the 25th.
The
25th. Yeah. But
Right.
Wednesdays, Councilor Maori, Wednesdays
Yes,
are going to be okay
That's-
for you?
Thank you,
going
Counselor.
forward?
I've actually managed to secure some rides for my child who I might need. So I'm actually okay with it. Staying on Wednesdays. I thought I was going to have to do some chauffeuring, but it looks like I'm not going to need to. So if this works for you, we can continue.
Well,
Okay.
if we do run into a problem, we can change it.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for everyone's flexibility. So, yeah. Yes, Counselor Nash.
And Counselor, you also know, Counselor Murray, right now, things are unsteady here in my family. And you already know, once we get that call, I will not be attending Finance Committee or either City Council, which Counselor Nash and Laura knows already. Okay.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you, Counselor Labarge, for being, keeping us in the loop about that. And I completely understand it.
Right,
A lot.
thanks.
Yes, Counselor Nash.
Yeah, so with the Wednesday conflict clarified or resolved, would it be possible for you and Laura to just generate a possible list of dates for the coming year, and then
Right.
at the next meeting we can just plug them all in our calendar and
Great idea.
and be done with? I think that's really, once we landed on the certain dates, we started clicking. So I think getting to that again would be really good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Counselor Nash. That makes sense.
Okay, I'll put that on our next agenda, our next agenda. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, folks. Well, thank you for your time. I know, we're all just getting back and I appreciate it. And Laura, I hope you feel better. Yeah, I would introduce.
Move to adjourn.
Well, I get a second. Mary Ann already made the
that's
motion,
right.
so I'll just second her original motion from about 10 minutes ago.
Thank you.
Okay.
Roll call.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
and Counselor Nash.
Yes.